and welcome to our latest edition of Talks on Palestine. And we are always having these talks to benefit the people of Palestine and more specifically the people of Gaza. So while we have wonderful conversation and gain so much insight from our guests, we never want to forget that we are doing this to help raise funds for our programs on the ground that make such a difference in the lives of the people there. Today's program that we are focusing on is Kinder's Women Empowerment Chicken Farming Program. What's great about this program is it brings career opportunities to poor women-headed households in the Gaza Strip. These women are often responsible for families with 5 or more children and have no alternative income sources. So they receive knowledge through the program, and it's a source of hope because it teaches them skills that they can use and can help them become self-sustaining. So this year, we are providing 34 women heads of households with 200 baby chicks to be farmed for sale on the open market, as well as training and tools necessary to successfully raise those chickens and hatch the eggs. The women learn amazing skills and information about running their own business and providing for their families, which really gives them hope. In the upcoming weeks, then, Kinder will buy back the chickens and the eggs that they have grown and give them to poor families that, as a much-needed income. So the chickens and the eggs will be given to more Palestinian families during our annual Ramadan fresh food distribution. So in addition to the chicks and the tools and the equipment that the women use, they also receive training, and this ensures that they have food security. The program is really a lifeline for families, and it also helps empower these mothers to be able to provide for their families and feed their children. And I just want to let you know that just $20 actually provides chicks, medicine, and feeders for one family. So imagine helping a family, helping a woman, head of household, feed her family, learn skills that she can then use to help have a sustainable income with just $20. And obviously, I just want to mention that Kinder USA continues to work the programs, but obviously, given the COVID-19 situation, we've made major changes to make sure that everyone is safe. Anyway, without further ado, I want to get to our guest today because today's talk is very special and different than our previous talks because our guest today is very special. Laila El-Haddad. Laila El-Haddad is an award-winning Palestinian author, social activist, policy analyst, and journalist. She frequently speaks on the situation in Gaza, the intersection of food and politics, her own personal journey as a Palestinian mother and journalist. She has written for prominent publications and appeared on networks such as NPR, CNN, and Al Jazeera. She's also the author of Gaza Mom, Palestine Politics, Parenting, and Everything in Between, and co-author of the critically acclaimed The Gaza Kitchen, a Palestinian culinary journey, which was the recipient of Best Arab Cuisine Book Award from Gourmand magazine. And so we are really excited to have her today, but not just have her for a conversation, have her actually demonstrate for us one of the dishes that she talks about. And so this is really exciting because we get to have a conversation and also watch her make something for us. So this is really cool. So Laila, first of all, welcome. And Malek, welcome. We have a sous chef with us today, and we're really happy to have you guys both.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Yes, this is Malek. She insisted to join me as she did a few weeks ago when I had another event. So it's becoming like a little routine of ours. So, and I'm so excited for everyone who's able to join us and hopefully learn and be able to give back all at the same time.
Well, I mean, I think it's wonderful for us to have Malek because that very much fits in with everything we do at Kinder USA. It's all about the children. It's all about, obviously when it comes to Gaza and Palestine, it's about helping the children, feeding the children. But I think teaching our children to cook and to remember our traditions is an amazing thing. So thank you, Malek. We're happy to have you with us today.
She's fiddling with her apron. She's
oh yeah, you have to get perfect,
Exactly. She was like, why are you messing with all the things in the background? Who's watching this exactly?
Yeah. I want to start by asking you about what you are making us today. I know it's we talked a little bit beforehand, and it's a very unique dish that most people don't think of when they think people don't think of automatically when they think of Palestinian cuisine. So tell us a little bit about it.
Yep. And in fact, it's funny because I'm in my mind, I'm thinking like maybe half the people will be like, of course we know this. It's the most sort of, it's the simplest and most obvious. And then others will be like, you're making what? But that's kind of why I do it. So I'm making bamia wa adas, and in English, okra and lentils. And some people actually, instead of the lentils, use blanched fava beans. But it's one of these dishes that I learned about when I was doing the field work for the book several years ago. And it kind of took me by surprise because I had never heard of it. And, we were talking earlier, Meha, and you had said that combination just sounds unusual, at least to, people maybe in the Levant, perhaps in the South Asian subcontinent, that might be a normal combination. And, what I learned is that this is a dish that is frequently made to utilize the end of season okra that is really, that's really kind of long and tough and fibrous that would otherwise be considered kind of like unfit for consumption, at least in the, Bilad al-Sham, Palestine, and the greater Levant, right? We generally prefer the much younger and more tender okra. Even this is a bit too big to make into stew, right? And so I thought it was interesting. I met this really enthusiastic physician and part-time, sort of jack of all trades, agronomist, foodie. And he was the one who shared this recipe with me and said that they take this end of season okra and they, instead of leaving it whole like you usually would with the stew, you chop it up and you stew it with the lentils and you kind of just finish it with a what we call a titlaya, kind of fry some garlic and some basil, which is frequently used in a lot of Gaza's dishes that it's not used kind of elsewhere in Palestine. And it's just so simple and so delicious. It's just a perfect, light supper at the end of summer. And pretty much all of this stuff is from my garden, well, except for the lemon. I wish I don't live in California, but, and so I really kind of wanted to demonstrate, something that is sort of comforting, something that people are not familiar with when it comes to Palestinian cuisine, and also something that kind of is very practical.
Mm-hmm.
Tend to cook in a way that we do as much as possible. It's like, what do we do with okra that's kind of tough? How can we utilize that? And finally, it's kind of an ode, and we mentioned this earlier, to kind of our elders, that generation of Palestinians that is, many of them in their 80s now, and the way that they used to eat, the fallahin and so on. Very simply, mainly like vegetables and grains and whatnot, not heavy meat consumption, and kind of whatever was available to them on the land, right? And then after the 1948 the catastrophe and the displacement and so forth, and many of them ended up in large urban areas or refugee camps and were, obviously displaced from their farms and homes, and gradually from a lot of their food traditions, and especially with the influx of aid organizations, and we can talk about this a little bit more. And I've seen this happen on a radical scale in Gaza in the past 10 years, where really there's been a radical shift in the food diet of people, where, I'm talking about people no longer using olive oil, let alone a lot of the basic grains, frita, fish, and so on and so forth. And so it's really kind of this urgency that I feel to be able to preserve a lot of these recipes, and then obviously share them with others in a way to be able to preserve, the heritage and this, tell the story as well.
Okay, so I want you to get started.
Uh-huh.
I want you to get started because I'm excited to see this, and I'm hoping that as you start cooking and telling us what you're doing, then we can talk more about some of the things you brought up, because they're all so interesting and they're also important to address, and especially maintaining the heritage, hanging on to it, keeping it alive, keeping these recipes alive, because the changes impose so much on the cuisine as they do on everything else. So you want to get started?
Yes, and so like I said, super simple. I chose something that can come together in like a matter of 20 minutes or less. So basically, we're going to start, as with all things, we're going to just chop an onion finally. And then I'm going to do that. Malak wanted to do it. I was like, no, I'm not going to have you chop an onion with a butcher knife on like live. So she's going to
do a horror movie.
Exactly, right? And I have, by the way, chopped a finger off live once, so I don't want that to recur.
Wow.
So I'm going to have her chop the okra. And like, basically, like I said, it's not like the regular small okra where we would just take the cap off. We're just going to kind of chop this into large chunks, right? And she'll show you that to you in a second. And I'm also going to, sorry, I'll show you. Yeah. I'm just going to do a little aerial view because we don't have everything. So you could see all the stuff that we have here. I wish I had another camera, but there's Malak for you.
All right.
And so I'm going to start by just quickly dicing this onion. And sorry, you were asking something earlier. I didn't hear what you were saying.
Well, no, I was going to first talk about your trip. I know that you were actually in Gaza back in October, which I have to say is more recent than most people I've spoken to. And so I kind of want to talk a little bit about what you were doing over there, because from what you said to me earlier, it seems very, very relevant to everything that we're talking about, and also the program that we are focusing on supporting today.
Definitely, definitely. I was really lucky to have had the chance to go back to Gaza after, Malak's asking if that's the right size. Hang on one second. Yeah, that's fine. She's saying, what do I do with the end piece? And I'll, just throw it in there. I'm not a complicated cook. I'm not like nitpicky on a lot of things. I always say to people, I would rather you try something and fail rather than not try at all, know? And if people sometimes get really intimidated. Did I just get logged out? Hello?
No, you're here. We hear you and see you and everything.
Okay. I just somehow, somebody was trying to, I didn't shut my FaceTime off. So I was saying I would rather people try and fail. Sometimes people get intimidated by the complexity of, and the fastidiousness of a lot of like Arab cuisine. And I'm like, don't worry about it. I had to be really specific in the book because people didn't, kept saying, because my instinct was like, a pinch of that and a glug of this, but I'm like, no.
That's always the issue.
Don't worry, don't sweat like messing things up. I always say that. Just go for it, So yes, let me talk about that. I'm just gonna throw these onions on the stove, and speaking of plugs, I'm just gonna put a generous glug of olive oil and then just saute the onions. No particular trick here. My mom likes to get them nice and golden and caramelized, but whatever, just a nice golden on them. My son's saying avocado oil is better, but I disagree. I'm all about, good old zayt zaytoun, nothing beats it, right? So, yeah, I was just watching a video that somebody had put with their grandmother on Instagram making taboon bread, and she must have been in her 80s or something. But it was great. She was like, "Yeah, Sitti, these days everybody complains about fats this and fats that and chicken and I don't know what, but I'm telling you, the best thing is just olive oil and bread, and that's it."
Oh, God. Yeah. Well, when you make fresh taboon bread and you have really good quality olive oil, yeah, who needs anything else?
Right. Unfortunately, that's something I'm just gonna let that do its thing for a while, and I just put it in a cast iron pan that I like, but unfortunately, I don't have access to that, and I didn't grow up in an area where we don't use we use clay ovens in Gaza that look similar to the tabboon. But if that's too tough, don't worry about it. She's trying to saw through one that might be a little past its prime, or I'll do it here. You do the other. Sometimes if they're really really big, they don't do the ones that are so tough that you can break someone's head with them. You want them to be kind of the long, but
you want them to be edible.
Exactly, you want them to be edible. They will not get edible if you cook them a lot if they're really tough, right? This is more like for seeds. You can dry them. Right. But you can also use the young okra, by the way. You don't need. I'm just saying, if it happens, those of you who have gardens know you leave the okra overnight and it gets this big. So you could, this is a good recipe for that. But anyway.
Because unfortunately, while I have a big backyard, I do not have much of a green thumb at all, and so I'm going to have to buy my okra, at a supermarket. I'm sorry.
Right, and that's what I do. I mean, okra is kind of very finicky. You can either get a really good harvest, and it doesn't produce a lot per. I have a big enclosed raised bed garden because we have so much deer here in Maryland. So I don't have a luxury of being able to plant on a whole acre. So every little. My husband always jokes at this rate, you might as well go to the market and buy stuff because what? No. So anyway,
we actually have a really nice comment that Christine is going to put up on screen about someone who is a big fan of yours, who has met you and is a big fan and wanted to say something. So,
okay.
Bruce says, "Thank you. I met you at a cooking demonstration that you hosted for a fundraiser for the Madison Rafah Sisters City project in Madison." Highlighting the new Gaza kitchen. Lovely to see you again, and this format is a fantastic idea. So yay, we've got some.
So nice to hear from you, Bruce, and to everyone else who's joining. I agree. I love this. This is super exciting, and I hope to do more of this kind of thing. Yeah, and definitely ask questions if you're interested. And so, not yet. Hang on one second. So anyways, but so I did get a chance to go to Gaza in October, and I'm just gonna stir these back here. I don't want them to.
I hear them sizzling, Laila, and we're just talking about this.
Yeah, right now at this stage, it's just the onions that we have going here. But we'll get back. I'm gonna in a bit. What we're gonna do is put the okra on there. That, as you can see, Malak has chopped up with my help. And so again, big chunks. Yeah, Malak wants to show you. And what we're gonna do. Throw that on the onions and basically let that just, it's actually quite funny because in Gaza, they have this expression. When we were asking this woman how to make this and like how we know how long to cook the okra, she said, I'm trying to think of the expression in Arabic, but in English, it translates to until it overwhelms its mother. And I was like, what does that mean? And so I
don't know that one.
Always really obscure expressions in Gaza. And it's like, I think what they mean is like, basically cook the bleep out of it, right? Like, it needs to be totally, you know what I mean? It needs to be completely just,
I love that. I'm going to start using that because I could
have been succumbed, just completely like, defeated kind of thing, So, yeah, but anyway, so it's just funny that way. Also, this dish uses, like, in place of a whisk, in the very end, you're supposed to kind of just stir everything together, but not totally blend it. And they use a very traditional tool called the mufrak, which is basically like a piece of wood with it almost looks like a medieval, like, torture thing, with little spikes coming out of it, but it's actually like almost like a whisk, right? Like, but everyone still uses it. It's really interesting. You go to the souk and you find it there, like you ask for mufrak and you find it. So I thought that was kind of cool too.
Now I feel like I need a mufrak and I'm not sure where to get one in LA.
I don't know, whisk is fine, but it's funny because I wanted to bring one back with me and I didn't get a chance because back to my trip. It was so, I mean, it was really, really a blessing because I've been wanting to go back and it's so difficult, as you know, nowadays, especially, I have 4 kids. You can't guarantee, will you be able to get back out if you get in, and so on and so forth with the border crossing. And I mean, alhamdulillah, I was able to go with the World Food Program and it was just really incredible, like in every sense. The people that I met, the experiences that I had, like I just didn't want to leave. Every day and every hour, I mean, my time was so packed. And we visited, in support of a program they were running to support and highlight children's nutrition and vulnerable families there. We visited several families and spoke specifically with women and who showed us specific dishes that they wanted to make. And there was kind of like this competition that they engaged in the end. It was kind of neat. And it was just amazing. I mean, I just, just in every sense, I mean, and it shouldn't surprise me because that's exactly what keeps me going back. I mean, I'm from there, but it keeps me wanting to go back. And anyone who's been understands. But just again and again, I was just kind of wowed over and over by the spirit of the people. And, especially by the women. I'm just going to interrupt and throw the okra on there. Malak's signaling me that I want to make sure the onions don't burn.
Those okras need to go in there and start overwhelming their mother.
That's exactly right. So I'm just going to dump the okra into the pot.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that we'll see. I'm taking a risk with some of these ones that seem slightly larger than they should be, but we'll see what happens. I always fish them out if they don't properly overwhelm their mothers.
Right, exactly. We'll kick them out.
Yeah, exactly. So it's funny because I think my co-author Maggie added a thing in there about if the okra is young, it seems you don't have to worry about their mothers. So
that's right.
So anyway, so this you're gonna see. So that's gonna take an hour. I know some people find the texture of okra is slightly offensive in terms of the sliminess. And I want to assure you, of course, when you're making it into a stew, you don't need to worry about that because it's small and you don't chop it up and that mucilage doesn't come out. But even when it's big like this and you're sauteing it, the key is to really like give it a nice saute, and that mucilage just kind of, I don't know, I find that it disappears.
So I was actually going to ask you about that because I've always wanted to know the trick for getting rid of the sliminess.
Right. Yeah. Well, I don't find it really that slimy when you keep it whole and small, and I think that might be why they do that in the Middle East. Is they usually never chop it up, right?
Right.
But I think in this case, when it gets larger like this, I don't find it as slimy for some reason. That might be why they only use the big ones for this dish, right? You really want to get a nice, I like almost a char on it, right? Like, so really let it do it. And that, again, overwhelm its mother, right? So I'm going to let it sit here for a little bit. And then we'll just basically add the add the lentils and the water. And then and let it stew down. How are we doing on time? Just so I know. No, not now. No, sorry. I don't know why this happens when I'm in the middle of something. My kids decide in the background to do all sorts of things that they shouldn't be.
It's complete Murphy's Law. Our guest from our last talk, Sari Bashi, was, she actually chose a time that was 4 o'clock in the morning on her end, just so her kids would be asleep. And of course, Murphy's Law, her little one was awake and stayed with us throughout the entire conversation.
Oh my gosh, yes, I've had that happen as well. So really
there's some biological need to mess up whatever it is.
I don't understand. I really don't. And I gave everyone fair warning. Like, listen, you either are in it for the long haul with me, or you go downstairs. And yet, I have people hovering around. You can't see them, and I'm like, why are you here? Go away.
That's okay. That's okay. That brings us back to the women heads of households that we've been talking about, the women that you met, and the women that we are working on empowering with our chicken program. We've lost. Laila's gone.
I'm sorry, I'm back. Why are you doing this to me when I'm in the middle of a live thing? Why? Okay, anyways, so back to Gaza. So it was really incredible in that sense. And I visited a lot of women's cooperatives. I visited, there was other local NGOs that were working on, and I think Kinder USA has similar programs, breakfast programs, feeding like preschool children, and basically what the common thread that I'm trying to weave here is that they all were women empowerment programs. And they were all highly successful because of that, because the studies have shown over and over that if you invest in women, in places like Gaza, it tends to lift the entire family up because they tend to be much more responsible. They, take that, be it a microloan or whatever it is, training, donation, etc., very seriously. And they are the ones that tie the family together, right? And so that's why I really do believe in this program that, that we're benefiting tonight, the chicken farming program, because I've seen the results like on the ground, and I've seen that it works. And not just from now, from like 10 or 15 years ago, when I remember visiting, with women who were part of at that time, it was micro loan programs for chicken farming projects through the UN, through UNRWA. So it is an excellent program. And I'm all about teach a woman in this case to farm, right? Rather than just giving her, giving her a chicken, right? And so it's all about sustainability. And but basically you were asking me about Gaza and the things that I saw and how things were different. I think the time that I had visited prior to that was in 2013. So it had been, 6 years or so.
Yeah.
And that doesn't seem like a long time, but in the context of Gaza,
right, with everything happening, of course it is.
Yeah, and I have been back, I would say every few years or so, but things just continue to change so drastically, and it's not something that the untrained eye, I think, would notice, right? From the outside, somebody who's just kind of helicoptering in to cover a story or something might go to the city where most people go and see kind of a plethora of cafes and some little small malls and think, wow, everything is great, right? But sort of that's, it's always like a can of worms. You scratch the surface and you dig a little deeper, and what you realize is it's all kind of a facade, right? And there's just no more middle class in Gaza, whereas just 10 years ago there was. Now even someone who is considered who used to be considered middle class. And what do I mean by that? Somebody who might be one of the, whatever it is, 60,000 or so that are government employees that are supposed to have a regular but meager salary, that they are now considered the impoverished, below the poverty line as well. I mean, I'm talking people who are government employees who are, have no furniture, who are eating on the ground, who basically are living day to day, right? And again, no one is like, oh my gosh, woe is me, come and look at, like, this is something you would have to uncover through conversation and through, do you know what I mean? Just, and I remember writing a story for, I think it was 1843 magazine. And just in the course of many conversations and asking people, well, what are you making for dinner today? It's like over and over and over again in just a completely random survey. It was like, oh, I'm making ma'ali, which is like, sauteed vegetables, right? Like squash, eggplant, potatoes, or I'm eating falafel, or this is what, and again, here in the West, privileged West, we might think, oh, that's so super healthy. Yes. But yes. What you're missing is that, for large families of, 6 to 8 or more people, this is what they're eating on a regular basis. And this is probably this is their main meal. There's no usually breakfast is skipped. It might just be, not like a lunch and a dinner and snacks. For 6 days a week, this is the main meal. And what I discovered is that now you're lucky if once a week, if then, 80% of the population is able to piece together enough, here and there to create a dish that has a little bit of animal protein, right? So everybody consistently was like, yeah, maybe on Fridays, if we're lucky, if we're able to, like this one woman I talked to, every day she would get like 1 kilo of kusa, and then the next day maybe I can get some rice, and the next day if we have enough to save up for a little bit of ground beef, maybe we'll make like stuffed squash on the weekend, right? But again, this wasn't in a pitiful way. It was just kind of like, well, this is the reality now, kind of thing, right? But this is, so this is the one kind. This was the major difference I think that I found. Oh, Malak wants me to taste it and see if it's hot. I think okra is my favorite vegetable in the world. So I know a lot of people are like, oh, okra. And I could eat it I always joke if I didn't have like a family and kids, I would eat so differently probably. Not that I want that gone, but.
How is it? Is it starting its overwhelming process?
It's starting. It's not, it'll get really tender once you boil it with right now the objective is to kind of get it a little bit charred. And it's kind of there already. And I just realized I forgot to add salt and pepper to it. So I'm just gonna, and I'll show you. Oh, you did. Malak says she added some, but I'm gonna add some more.
Oh, okay.
You could see here. I'm gonna add. I use a lot more, Malak. I know. You wanna add some pepper too? Okay. And so yeah, that's good. خلاص بكفي. نحط عليها فلفل أحمر إذا بدك. So I think it's good. So I think now I don't want the onions to burn. So I think what we're gonna do now is we're just gonna add the red lentils. About a cup of.
This whole time I thought you were gonna do brown lentils. Interesting. Okay.
No, this was a point of contention when we were writing the book. We couldn't figure out if it was red. But I think we finally concluded after talking to a lot of people that it was red. And again, there are some people that insist it's done with foul majroush, which are blanched fava beans. Yes. So who knows? I guess the idea is it cooks. I don't see why you couldn't do it with brown. It would just take much longer. And I think the idea is you want it to tenderize pretty quickly. So Malak, can you take that out of the bowl? And then I'm just gonna pour in. It's usually done with water. I just happen to have some leftover like broth in so I'm just gonna use that.
Wouldn't broth though? I mean, I know that it's not an animal protein meal, but wouldn't a broth like a chicken broth or a beef broth actually add kind of a depth of flavor?
Yeah, and that's why I did it. But I always give people the options because I never know whether. I always say it in the book, sometimes I think I give too many options. I'm like, you could put broth, you could put water, do whatever you want. So yeah, I think so. I think because although somehow I find that chard and okra, for some reason, and when you add lentils, they have this kind of earthiness or meatiness that you don't really need, an additional kind of umami flavor. That always surprised me about those two things, okra and chard. But like I said, if you have it, why not? You don't need it, but if you have some leftover broth you want to use and it's going to go bad or something, this is a good way to use it up. So, So yeah, so we're just gonna let that cook for a while. I'm hoping it finishes in time. I'm gonna raise the heat up.
Well, we still have a half an hour.
Okay,
I'm until I see the finished product.
That wants me to show everyone the difference. I'm sure most people know, but these are the brown lentils, and the red ones are just with the skin removed for those who are unfamiliar. And I don't know what this is. I guess this is another variety. This is a South Asian type of lentil that my neighbor taught me how to. Yeah,
I don't know those. Yeah.
She wants me to show everyone all the lentils that I have in. Okay. Those are way down.
I mean, those are the two that I have at home and that are typical in an Arab household. I think is the red ones and the brown ones. The red ones for the soup and the brown ones for
exactly right. Yeah. And you know, we were talking earlier about I didn't grow up with a lot of these things. Did not come like naturally or intuitively to me because, you know, you're in Dubai now. I was mainly in Saudi Arabia. I was born in Kuwait, lived in Bahrain. We would summer in Gaza. Even in Gaza, we were in the city, and so we didn't ever see like a taboon, or it was kind of with this romantic nostalgia. I would think, wow, I want to be like on a, you know, farm, and maybe that's why I love gardening so much or whatever. And in fact, I help my son build me a clay oven. Hopefully this week we're going to start, so I can try to do some of those things. I try as much as possible to like replicate or try to some of those traditions here in the garden, in the house, so I can show the girls and the kids, you know, well, this is how they do it in Palestine, or let's trial and error. It's like experiential learning, because I myself don't know a lot of this stuff. And I always tell people, that's a really good question. Malak is asking, do you leave the frothy stuff that rises to the surface of the...
That is a really good question. I know.
You know what? My mom knows it, and I think it's this kind of fastidiousness that characterizes a lot of Arab cuisine that dates back to like medieval Abbasid times, where anything that looks zinnig or kind of, you know, gamey or smell, it has to be removed. So when you're boiling meats of any kind and like froth or foam rises to the surface, you skim that off. I've seen her do it with lentils too. I don't know that it's necessary, but you could do it for sure. So this is what she's...
I do think, like you said, it is a generational thing, because, for example, my mother is completely obsessed with removing that. Like, it's gotta, you know.
Oh, my mom too. Sometimes the only reason I'll do it is because sometimes there'll be like a burned onion by mistake, and it floats up to the top of the surface. So, but really, I don't think it's that necessary. But I want that bowl to serve in Malak. So I'm going to toss this in the sink really quickly. But we don't need to remove the rest of it. And I wonder if like some of I'm just thinking out loud here, but if some of the sliminess is in that like surface, who knows? I'm just theorizing, but I could be wrong.
No, but I love the way you approach cooking. I mean, I remember a few years ago, we had you at one of our Kinder USA fundraising events in LA, and we did a presentation. I think it was it I think with the tomatoes. Yeah, that was much simpler. I love that. But I think that this you know, watching you and talking to you as you're cooking now kind of really it warms my heart, because I cook like that, and I have, for example, my sister-in-law who's trying to learn more Palestinian dishes because we're Palestinian and she's actually Egyptian, and I always have that same thing. I'm always like, just kind of go with it, just put it in, and if it's not great, you know, you take it, and it drives her nuts because she wants exactly what you were talking about, like how much do I put in, you know, do I remove this?
And I will say, when I'm visiting my in-laws, like that, you know, my husband's Palestinian from the north of Palestine, grew up in the Jalil refugee camp in Baalbek in Lebanon. And whenever I visit them, I mean, I really feel they're even more far removed from a lot of in the traditions, but they all are sort of from similar villages. So they all have inherited this very sort of micro-specific, micro-regional cuisine from a specific time, and it's really interesting. But so they're very particular about all the way that they do things, and I'm like an utter failure when I go, so I don't even attempt. Like, I mean, I'm like, you know, I think I know what I'm doing, and then I go there and I'm like, yep, clearly I don't, you know. So they don't even want me anywhere near the food. It's like if I try to core a kusa, squash, they're like this tiny, and I go right through them all. If I try to do what I have, they're like, at this rate, no one is going to eat. Just step aside. So I'm like, okay. So the ethnographer here in Observer,
say hello. I am
and give you and take nice Instagram pictures, and like, so basically that's why I'm like, don't worry, because I mean, I love cooking, I love the kitchen, I love food, but I'm also like, don't know everything, and I don't know how to make, things always come out right. But I think that's part of the journey. You know what I mean? I still get excited when my matluba flips out perfectly. I'm like, yes, whereas,
there's achievement with that, Laila, that, it's a sense of achievement, seriously, when it comes out. And then I take pictures and, all that.
No, and I know people who make like this incredible array of, like it's nobody, like it's nothing, this, or just pull this off in an hour. So, yeah. So anyway, it's fun. I enjoy it, but it's great. It's a great way to, learn, obviously, about, not just, culturally, but I mean, it's, I find that being able to cook, I'm able to convey, the Palestinian story much more effectively, and much more sensually as well, right, to people, and make kinds of connections that I wouldn't otherwise. And that's kind of really why I love doing this.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there are different ways that people, try and hang on to the heritage and tell the story and make a difference. And I think that this is such an important one and an exciting one, and can really draw in a lot of people to just something they hadn't thought of before. And so I very much appreciate it, and I love that you're doing that. I want to touch on something a little different. This was a handful of years back, but when Anthony Bourdain actually visited your family in Gaza. Not everybody, a lot of people know about the episode, but not a lot of people know that it was your family that he actually went to visit.
No, it was not, but, but yeah, no, but it's like my family. It was a family that I had actually, previously met, right? So I had known them. I visited them when I was researching the book. But I think what you're referring to is that is my daughter in the picture. This one right here, that's Malak. And I think that's what people didn't realize. They just assumed it was like some random baby that that I thought was cute, and I decided to do a photo shoot with. But that's actually Malak. Yeah, here's Malak now. And so I think it was a really stressful time because she was 6 months old. And I basically just hadn't slept forever. And I had to travel to Gaza by myself. It wasn't like I was in this like luxury convoy with CNN, and they were like, if you can go and find your way there and meet us there, great. If you can't, so I just basically had to find my own way there with the help of IMU. Thank you, IMU, if they're listening, helped facilitate that. And then I made it there, and they met me there. But it was kind of like the whole time I was made to feel like, okay, we're going to this place to put you, and you can, meet us there. But I knew it was such an important story to tell that I really was kind of willing to make some sacrifices, because I knew that in the end, and I hope I was right, it would be worth my while and their while. I just wish that they had kind of like treated me a little bit better. And it's funny because one of the producers, she was just young British lady who at the time, she was just, it was just very, why, we don't have insurance to cover a child on this. So you have to kind of like, so I had to pump milk and leave Malak the first day with my uncle. The second day, it was a long day, and like I couldn't pump enough milk, so I had to bring her with me. And I'm like, you don't have insurance to cover, it was just weird. 2 years after we filmed that, I needed to get back in touch with her for something, and she was apologizing profusely. I guess she had just had her first children, a pair of twins, and she kept saying all I could think about was how you did that with the baby, and I felt like such a a pain. Yeah, but anyway, it's just so just keep that in mind. Always be sensitive.
I'm kind of surprised, because I thought that given how important your role was in facilitating it, that they would have handled it differently.
Sorry, 1 second. I'm just gonna check on this as we're talking. I know, and again, I'm not like complaining. I'm so happy that it happened. It just didn't happen in the way as simply. I think I'm gonna add a little bit more water to it. Malak, why are we here microwaving things right now? This isn't really the time. Actually, the lentils are almost done, but I'm just gonna add a little bit more. No, I mean, it wasn't. It's just as usual. I find oftentimes a lot of the mainstream media are kind of fed this, or have these preconceived notions, or are fed a certain kind of either agenda or whatever, or sometimes it's just lack of familiarity with the story that they don't. And they have their own connections and their own, they knew already, Tony knew Yotam Ottolenghi, and so he was friends with him, and so that was a natural person to go to. to talk when they were talking about Jerusalem. And and it was only, they reached out to me, I think, because somebody, Maryam Shaheen or someone, had suggested, Layla's kind of the person on Gaza, but they really just wanted my information and they didn't want me to be there. They thought they could do it with someone maybe. And so I kind of had to, advocate for myself. And I guess this is a lesson for a lot of people listening out there, especially maybe younger people who are getting into the game, be it journalism or other, is really, you do have to tell your story and advocate for yourself. I think we sometimes make the mistake of thinking, oh, well, if someone's not coming to me directly and asking me to do something, then, you do have to kind of just, find your way in. And so I did have to push a little bit, but I mean, they loved it, thankfully. And so I think it was worth it,
Yeah.
And I knew there was some stories to tell there that people didn't have access to. I think in the same way that maybe a male stringer would have, or male, you know what I mean? And this is something I think unique about the book too, that, Maggie and I wrote, is it was authored by females. It was female, women centric, for a reason, because that kind of gives you a kind of access that you wouldn't, I think, have otherwise, to the kitchen and to the household and, to all sorts of things. But anyway, that was Malak in the picture. And the second day, she was just, poor thing, beside herself. She never cries. And as a baby, I don't remember her crying. My fourth child does, but this one never. And she just was inconsolable, right? And to the point where the taxi driver, Miskeen, I remember his name was Mehed. He had 4 daughters, and he was like, "Oh, I can handle this." And he tried to watch her. And after an hour, I cannot get her to be quiet. So there's this scene where he's handing her off to me. You just see these hands, and I'm trying to get her to be quiet, and she won't be quiet. And then finally, that's when, Tony, took her from me and said, "Let me try," and then he just kind of put her to sleep.
Wow.
So that's the kind of bit that people, you don't know what's going on unless you hear the backstory. You just see him kind of put this baby, right? So,
Obviously.
yeah.
So thank you for telling us that side of the story, because that's definitely, people see the episode and it's all, perfect and polished in the end. And you don't realize that there are so many backstories that involve something like you really feeling how important this is and how important it is to be a part of this and pushing for that to happen and kind of navigating your way to make sure that ultimately the stories are told and that they're told well. So yeah, so
that's exactly right. I mean, I was so passionate about this that I was like, I just need to make sure this is done right. And of course, it wasn't perfect. I still sort of have some issue with the way that it was kind of narrated. But, there were stories told from Gaza that wouldn't have been told otherwise. And that was the point, to be able to highlight these families and these stories and to really show Gaza in a different way, in a different light than it's depicted.
On that note, I think one of the things that I love a lot about the Gaza Kitchen, about the book, is that it is a book of recipes, obviously, and I'm not going to lie to you, I reference it so often. It's in my kitchen, and I yank it out and get so many different ideas, and it's such a great resource. But I love how much the personal stories, the women's stories that you have in there. It is such an interesting take. As you said, I mean, obviously it is really the way to get into the kitchen and into the heart of the household. But I think it's just also such a beautiful way of humanizing where the heritage of this cuisine comes from, remembering that this is about people putting flavors together and things together and handing them down to their daughters and their daughters. And so I think that it adds so much to have those places in there.
Yeah, thank you. And that was really important to us. And in fact, we wanted to do something a little bit different. And that's, I think, the first edition. This is this was the latest one. And, I'm sad to report that it's no longer in stock. I think after COVID and the printing, everything kind of died down. And we were supposed to come out with a 3rd edition, but it hasn't gone to press yet. But it's coming out I'm hoping, few months. And then the new edition is going to have some new recipes and some adjustments and some updates. So you can look for that soon. But yeah, I mean, what we wanted to do differently was, not just write sort of a book. I think up until pretty recently, most traditional cookbooks and, cooking shows and by the way, we're just peeling some garlic here. And as many of you may or may not know, garlic is kind of essential to pretty much all of the dishes of Gaza. Whereas in other parts of Palestine, some of the rural areas in the north, they really shun garlic. They just,
really?
My husband, oh yeah. I mean, even in Gaza, right? The majority of the Palestinians there are from areas outside of modern day Gaza. 75, 80%. And a lot of them that come from the eastern, right outside of modern day Gaza Strip, the eastern villages, they don't cook with garlic whatsoever. It's like they find it really, it's interesting, the fallahin. And even in the north, I know north of Palestine, like my husband's family rarely use garlic, right? So
Wow.
I know, trust me, it's so painful and difficult to cook for when I'm dealing with, because we're all about like, bring on the shatta,
Exactly.
the right here, freshly ground. Oh my God, I just dropped it all over my laptop. Okay.
Oh.
Can you get this issue? But anyways, but garlic is like really essential to a lot of the dishes. So we're gonna mash some garlic with salt, and that, yeah, Melak is gonna do that, and then I'll get back to your question. But we're gonna mash some garlic and salt in the zibdiya, and you asked me about that earlier. And this is one of those sort of ubiquitous, vessels, clay vessels that you find in Gaza. It's a mortar, really thick, unglazed clay mortar, fired up, and lemonwood pesto. This is the very, now in the sometimes in the modern, I mean, the lemonwood ones are going to be more expensive, so a lot of people nowadays will use the plastic ones. But I just love, and people are always saying, where can I get one of these? And I'm like, unfortunately, you can't. I keep wanting to work in a way to be able to have them sort of designed in Gaza or manufactured here or something, because they're just amazing. You prep, you always mash the garlic in them, and then you serve the Gaza salad in them, and you bake in them as well, a lot of the dishes. But anyway, so she's going to do that, and we're going to add some salt to give it some friction. Where did it go? Okay. But anyway, what we wanted to do differently was not just kind of write a cookbook with recipes, right, that are kind of completely out of their natural context, but find a way to be able to tell stories through food, right? And really enable people to utilize the book to learn about a people and a place, and the ongoing struggle as well. And, I mean, what we provided was just a small little kind of glimpse, into like hundreds, millions of other stories that we could have, including when I last visited, I put a lot of those stories up on my Instagram feed. But that was the idea, right? Is to make it different in that sense. We weren't approaching it as chefs or restaurateurs or anything like that. We didn't want to provide one of these kind of like really, sexy, glossy books with like perfectly photo finished pictures and, or modified in any sense, or really it was just kind of dishes in their natural context. No matter how messy and ordinary and mundane and simple, that's what we wanted to provide. Yeah, but that's way too much garlic. That's enough. She's like, do you have to take all the skin off? I'm like, yeah, you kind of want to, because you don't want garlic skin in your. But hang on, so anyway, so that's kind of what I think where the book stands out in the, I think since then a lot of other Palestinian books have come out, cookbooks, which is great because we feel kind of like in a way honored in the sense that we opened the door in a sense for a lot of these other, chefs, writers, etc., to publish different Palestinian books, where there was relatively few, if any, before that point, maybe one or two. But I think, what we try to do differently is basically, again, it's more of sort of a documentary or ethnographic approach, one that tries to kind of preserve and codify the cuisine in as a traditional way as possible, rather than kind of modify it in any sense, and just kind of an ode to, the people of Gaza. And it's always surprises me, especially when I went back. Hang on one second. Don't mash my finger. Thank you. When I was in Gaza in October, I was so surprised. I would be in like taxi cars, and it really like warmed my heart. People would be like, "Oh my gosh, you wrote the book on Gaza," and it's not even published in Arabic. But I think people are so proud because for them, for most who haven't even left Gaza, Gaza's like claim to fame is it's always on the news and it's being bombed and it's, under siege, and that's basically it. But anyone from there knows how passionate they are about their food as well. And so many other things, as you know. I mean, they're just full of life and so vibrant and really there's so many, so much brain power, so many geniuses there as well. I'm like constantly overwhelmed. And so I think they were really proud that like, this is something that's out there. Like they just can't believe it. Like Sumagia is now being made by, you know, an LA food critic or whatever. So, you know, so it's great. Sometimes I'm like, you know, sometimes like, yeah, this will be in the end, the lemon. We'll just squeeze it on. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I just can't. I need to like do more. And it's just so hard with all the kids. And sometimes I'm like, I guess if I die today, I can say there's this one thing I did to change the world. So, you know, but oh shoot, you know what? You're right, Malak. I completely. Well, no, we're gonna put that in the end. She's asking about that. Whenever you're cooking anything with lentils, in Palestinian cuisine, you always add cumin, right?
Oh yes, of course.
It's supposedly like an anti-flatulent, but it's also very good for digestion, right? I guess to help you because if you're eating.
It also tastes really good. So
to me, Sammy Tamimi sent me these with a copy of his new book, Palestine. So they're just kind of like nicely little packaged spice boxes. I'm like, I wish I had a whole team and a restaurant and like a production to be able to make fun little like things like that. But alas, now I think this is almost done. I'm just gonna taste it. What? I feel like some of this okra might have been a little bit too. That's it. We're not gonna add. We're gonna fry the garlic now. I'm just gonna mash this a little bit more. Malak was asking me about the garlic, and you could use a garlic press. Don't worry if you don't have a. I think it's just something about the mortar and pestle that's very therapeutic and you know.
And hearty. I feel like it has that kind of hardiness about it. I
always travel, by the way.
I don't have garlic, so it's going to be garlic for me. I said, unfortunately, as much as I love them, I don't have one, so it's going to be just regular old garlic press for me.
No, really, man. I tell you, I really need to start like producing these somehow.
That and the mafrika. I'm putting my name on the shopping list please.
Okay. So I think what just fell down. Some of these okra that I put in were a little bit too tough, but that's okay. I'll still eat them. So I think it's done. I'm gonna show you what it looks like.
Yeah, please.
But we still need to add so you see it's completely hot. Yeah, we're gonna add the garlic and the stuff, but that's gonna be in a separate pan. You've probably heard of a titlaya, right?
Right.
Yeah, and I don't even know that you need. I know they use the mufraq and the whisk, but honestly, the lentils just fall apart and you just kind of stir it. The idea is they want the okra to be kind of combined. So yeah, I'll show them in a bit, Mama. So we're gonna fry up the garlic now, and usually that's done in a separate pan.
Right.
So again, more olive oil.
Right.
And that's just something that you finish a lot of dishes with in the Middle East. Mama, I'm just talking right now. Okay. And so garlic, and then we're gonna add garlic, cumin, and then the basil, right? And so in Gaza, we usually use either dill for a lot of dishes, right? Jarada, in both seed form and fresh, or they use basil, usually in conjunction with any kind of okra dish. I don't know why, but they do. I guess they do that in the South in the US too. So
that's really interesting. I can't say that my family has done that. Like, I mean, I didn't really grow up with that, but so it's really nice to have a different.
Wait, do they use that or not?
No, basil. We don't use a lot of basil.
You do or you don't?
Do not.
Oh yeah, I don't know. It's weird. My mother has a different theory, which it's kind of not the most PC theory. Her mother was.
Don't cut it.
No, hang on. Her grandmother rather was. Her mother was Cherkessiya, even though she was born in Palestine. She was Circassian, and her grandmother was from Damascus. She was Kurdish from Damascus, and so a lot of their cooking was influenced by that. And she always says. Her grandmother used to say, it's because Ahl Gaza don't know what cilantro is. You know how the Syrians put cilantro on everything. And so they just use basil instead. They don't know any better. Don't just forgive them, you know? And I'm like, gee, thanks. I don't know if that's really like the reason, but you know. Anyway,
I mean, Rehan is a very, it is a very Palestinian herb, and
I also like. I think Gaza's climate is too hot for cilantro. We use it sometimes, but it's rare to find. Whereas like the basil, so it makes sense why basil would be more common in Gaza, right?
Right.
So yeah, so basically we're gonna just put the yeah, Mama, we're basically done. We're just gonna throw everything in there. I know, but we're almost there. So I'm just gonna put that garlic in the olive oil.
Mm-hmm.
Did you say ew?
No.
And that just takes about a minute or so, and then we're gonna throw the basil.
Mm-hmm.
Oops, I'm not giving you the best view, I guess. There we go.
Here.
Oh, you want to hold it? Okay, thank you, Malak. Okay, and then we're gonna add the cumin. And about a teaspoon, I would say, maybe half a teaspoon, whatever you want. And then
You want? I love it.
What'd you say?
I love the whatever you want.
I go with the flow. I'm all like, you know what? I'm gonna add some of these great dried red chilies that I got from Gaza as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I went specifically to the old suit and I got them. And usually you would crush these in the mortar and pestle, but I'll just do it by hand since we're
showing.
yeah.
So Laila, I think we actually have the recipe for this, right? You actually sent us the recipe.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll definitely want to put that up and also put that later on our page so that people can.
So I'm gonna put it in the bowl now, and then we can sit and sample it as we finish talking. So I'm just gonna. Oh, Malak, did you go away? Okay. I'm just gonna whisk the whole thing a little bit.
Here, mommy. Here, let me just bring my.
And so when you whisk it, the okra really kind of blends in. And I get, we used to have this problem because a lot of the dishes we were documenting didn't look like the most appetizing, and we didn't.
Right.
But they taste amazing, and so I'm like, how do we do we make them look really pretty? Do we not? I don't know. So I'm always like somewhat,
That is actually quite a challenge. I mean, food photography is so interesting because you see, things look just so gorgeous and appetizing.
I know, right? I guess most food, is not going to look super appetizing if you don't like garnish or whatever, right?
Right.
So I just poured it in the bowl, and then I'm just gonna. Speaking of garnish, you know what? I'm gonna. Malak, are you still showing it? No, you can just go like this. Just go like this. There we go. Yep.
Is it showing?
It's okay. I'm just gonna squeeze.
Okay, there, I can see it showing.
Can you see it? Okay. I'm just gonna squeeze some lemon on it.
Mommy, you just squeezed all over the
I squeezed it on you. Okay.
And all over the fire.
And then we're almost done. No, just keep doing. Just don't move the camera. Yep, that's good. I'm just gonna garnish with some of this. And so it actually does look pretty. And then
a dash of oil.
Yeah. And actually what you want to do is you can take the oil from the actual pan. But I'm going to add a little bit more oil. Yeah. And then basically, you see, it looks all pretty.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Well, I like to put the, what, Malak? I like to put the titlaya on top rather than just mix it in because that looks much nicer that way. You know what I mean? So.
And then you typically eat it with warm bread, right?
Yep, that's right. And so we have the bread over here. Malak's going to show you.
Yeah.
Like here, out of the way here. Yep. I don't think they can probably see Malak, but yeah, basically you're going to eat it with this bread. Or we're going to talk a little bit more now, Malak. But if everyone can see that, I can give you a better picture also.
No, stop it.
I really don't know why my children, I don't think they understand that I'm doing this live thing and they think it's funny to, but regardless. Okay, so you can see that, yeah. And Malak is going to try it. Malak, what do you think?
How does it taste? Yeah? Thumbs up? Okay. Well, as soon as I get home to LA, I am trying this and seeing how my family reacts to it.
And like I said, be careful because I'm going to take a picture really quickly. Hang on, because if the okra is too dry, it won't be as good. So I think one of them might have been beyond prime, but like I said, it's just go with the flow.
It's a learning experience. It's a journey, like you said.
Now this is the great thing. If I told them I'm making this for dinner, nobody would want to eat it. He's even saying in the background, it's disgusting. But then yes, she has a piece of bread and she's literally, I'm going to get you on camera. She's literally eating it as we go. And I'm like, you said it was disgusting. So I don't know. I don't know.
And it tastes
But
nice.
Malak, did you like
Tastes
it?
like
Malak?
popcorn.
So anyway, so that's bamia وعدس. And you know, it's one of those dishes that people, old timers, get super excited about.
Right.
And I'm hoping that a lot of the new generation will rediscover it as well. So
Oh, I'm excited about it. I'm in the somewhere in the middle between the old timers and the new generation, but I'm really
Right.
excited about making it at home.
yeah, I'm a fan of these like super, you know, quick, you know, light but filling dishes. I'm not, you know, I'm not a big fan of the manasif and the like the rice and the, you know what I mean? You see my daughter's like, I am. But yeah. So anyway, yeah, but we were talking before.
Yeah, I just want to ask you, I mean, you know, we talked about the book and the importance of keeping the cuisine alive and you know, spreading it. Actually, like you said, you know, you've got someone in LA.
I have to stop you because it actually came out amazing. Like I think so much better than any other time I made it. Despite that really big okra that had me
Maybe
worried.
you've been talking.
And I'm surprised Malak's eating it too. Really, really good. So I highly recommend you guys make it.
No, absolutely, and we will, and we did put up the recipe, and we will put it on our page and everything, and
I
the
actually love how, I don't know, you probably can't see it, but some of these basils got like super crispy, so it's kind of cool.
oh, yum! How fun!
Yeah, so it actually looks really pretty too. But
Yeah. Well, there you go. It
Yeah.
belongs in the book.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, given what we were talking about the importance of this all, what is, you know, what are next steps for you? What do you want to continue this journey of telling these stories and documenting these stories through food and through cuisine and through cooking and so on? And also a little bit, I want to maybe touch very quickly about the idea of appropriation. I mean, we haven't gotten very political, which I love. I mean, we've kept this, you know, this talk very light and fun. But I mean, I'm sure that that's something that is definitely on your mind when, you know, when you do so much cooking and telling stories through cooking.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And no, I'm always like, food is inherently political. You can't shy. It's, you know, inescapably. No, because I'm talking. She's like, if it's good, why aren't you eating? Because it's inescapably political, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? And sorry, I'm just gonna grab some water. But whoops, and smash my phone in the process. But so no, I have no problem, and that was probably something else I should have mentioned earlier. Is I think a lot of books a lot of cookbooks up until pretty recently were very timid when it came to, you know, kind of hitting the nail on the head or talking any politics. Like they were trying to keep things strictly about food, which I get and I appreciate. Maybe not, it's not everyone's cup of tea, especially if you're maybe, you know, a chef or a restaurateur, but I just felt like it was something that you could not be avoided when it specifically came to Palestine. But I think when you look in the, you know, across the board comparatively, you know, you're dealing with any kind of, you know, indigenous populations or oppressed peoples, you're going to have a similar issue. You know, I recently did an event with Puerto Rican activists and other indigenous activists from the U.S. and you know, a lot of similarities and commonalities in terms of, you know, the appropriation of certain indigenous ingredients or kind of their corruption or rebranding or whatever. And that speaks to, you know, your point about appropriation. And I think, you know, what I always like to say is, you know, there's sort of a fine line between, you know, people wanting to, you know, try dishes or cook dishes or incorporate dishes into their, that's fine, versus, you know, wielding food as a political tool to further an agenda, right? Which is the case in Palestine, which then becomes, you know, even worse than appropriation, right? It's kind of like what I call food colonization. Just another frontier, right, of the, you have this settler colonial occupation and military expansion. And then you have it on the, how do you then further that agenda on all fronts, including the cultural. And, you know, very early on, and we talk about this in the book, the early, you know, Zionists tried to put what they called roots in the land by, you know, claiming those foods as their own. And there was a recent really good article in Haaretz about how they even tried and botched many attempts at making za'atar blends, and so on, right? And so this is a thing. It's not like we're just in our imagination or we're being overly sensitive, right? It's a thing. How can you establish roots in the land and you know, adopt those aspects of the culture that you found to be favorable to your kind of story, and then disappear, erase the rest, right? In the case of the Palestinians. And so this is something that we try to talk about a lot, and also help those in the culinary field understand the dangers of, right? Is like, where do you draw the line? And this is something, it's kind of a work in progress. This is speaking to your other question about what's next. I mean, something I really hope to do is kind of establish some kind of collective of Palestinian, food artists, writers, culinarians, etc., chefs, to be able to kind of, collaborate, come up with maybe, joint statements, do different events together, and be able to address these kinds of questions and join forces together. And I think that's kind of, for me, where I'm envisioning kind of a next step. It's really hard because I see people do all these things, and I'm always like, man, it's just very tough. Obviously I'm barely able to manage my household with, as you can see, I can barely do an event for an hour. So let alone like pull off like anything. So I just tough. I always like, why can't I do like more books or more whatever? But you have to take things as they come. Investing in my kids, obviously my family is the number one priority for me. But using still the knowledge that I have, that I feel not many do, specific knowledge, on Gaza, and use that at any chance I get to help different organizations fundraise, to be able to raise awareness about Gaza, to, like I said, take it a step further. I have all kinds of other projects in my mind that I want to eventually be able to do. I know Interlink wanted me to work on specifically a children's, Palestinian children's recipe storybook kind of thing, like weaving together. But again, so it's part of the problem, I think, and it makes me kind of sad, is the physical, our inability to actually visit our land, right? And some of us are able, some of us are not, or with difficulty. I always think, at least certain people can visit maybe Ramallah or whatever. We from Gaza don't have that luxury, right? It's very, very rare. If we're able to do it, it's like a huge thing, right? It's a big ordeal. And then we don't know when it's going to happen again. Right. And so that's part of the problem. You can't plan and go, well, I'm going to go. And when you go, you're so rushed to be able to visit family and do everything, you squeeze everything you can into 10 days. So I think people don't realize that. They really underestimate how difficult it is for us to be able to visit our own land. And it really does make me sad, that then disconnection that results. And so that's why I try here to be able to do as much as I can to help my children at least stay informed about what's going on. So it's not as easy as, well, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, and this is how I'm going to do it. But I hope. I have so many ambitions, but it's just really, really difficult. But looking forward, I do see myself maybe doing more collaborations and things like that. I think that's kind of where I think but I see a lot of sort of energy and excitement in this field, and I think it can kind of move us forwards in ways that the traditional politics has been unable, I think. So, we'll see.
Well, I mean, from an outsider's perspective, you've done a lot and you're doing a lot, and it's amazing that you're doing it while raising 4 children and trying to give them as much of the culture and the language and everything. And I mean, I know just raising my own daughter and trying to talk to her in Arabic all the time, it's not the easiest task. So doing it with 4, I'm sure is 4 times as hard. So yeah, but thank you for everything you do, and please keep it up. I know, like you said, it's not easy, and it is a long journey, and there are so many challenges, and obviously not being able to go back versus, if you were French and decided to go, and invest all this time and, your heritage and so on. And so, yeah, the challenges are greater, but, the rewards are so high and so amazing. So please keep up what you're doing. And thank you for joining us today. And thank you for giving us this recipe. And like I said, I'm super excited to make it as soon as I get back home to LA, and pray that my daughter will try it and we'll have some of it.
Does she live in Dubai or in?
No, I'm just here for work. I live in Los Angeles with my family. Yeah. So my entire family loves to cook and Palestinian dishes, even though my mother's not Palestinian, she's Egyptian, but she has taken on all of the amazing dishes that we love. But your book has so many that I'm not familiar with that it's really exciting. It's really fun to be
it's kind of a weird obsession of mine to find every single obscure recipe that anyone had ever come across. And
well, there you go. I mean, and I love experimenting. I mean, for me, it's just, it's so exciting to be able to like mix flavors that you hadn't thought of, like Addis and bamia, you know, and then basil. And so I'm excited to try it. And I'm sure a lot of people watching will be. And like I said, we will put it up. And thank you again, Laila. Thank you for being with us. And Malek, our sous chef, thank you for joining us. And thank you for cooking with us and showing us. And thank you for the amazing conversation. And like I said, please keep it up. Keep up what you're doing. And
someone is asking me, what is the saying in Arabic? Or is that an old question? There says that there's 2 questions. Is it too late? I don't know.
Yes, I think we do. But I know you said you couldn't remember it in Arabic. And so
I think I might have it in the book. It's something. Hang on, I'll find it, because I remember I came across it earlier, and I thought like, oh. Hang on. Let's see. I don't know why it's just like right now failing. My memory is failing me, but gosh, I think it's like something immo, like
well, we can promise Tyson
something like that. Like it's driving me nuts, but it's probably at the moment we get off, I'm going to remember it. You know?
Of course, the moment we get off, you're going to remember it exactly. And we had
almost like someone who controls is in charge, right, of their mother or their mother-in-law or something like that. So, you know, hakam. I think it's like hakam immo or something like that. You know.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Of course, we'll remember it right after, and then please send it to us. We will definitely put it up. It's kind of the overarching theme for our episode today.
Right.
Another question? We had another question. Do you want to put it up before we go?
Okay. So yeah, this is actually, I was mentioning earlier how there's a whole, and I'll show it to you. There's a whole genre of dishes in Gaza that are like what we kind of put them under the heading of one bowl meals, pulses, grains, and greens. And they all kind of have this similar theme of having some kind of pulse or grain, you know, lentils or beans or something. And it's some kind of green that's in season. Spinach or chard is used a lot, you know, or in this case, okra. And then different seasonings, dill or pepper or garlic. And they're all kind of cooked together. And, you know, another popular one around this time is romania, which I've made a lot as well, right? Which is like lentils and eggplant and pomegranate. And they're all cooked together in a pot, and they're poured into bowls like this. And then they're as a main meal, right? Usually as like, you know, late lunch, early supper, or whatever, with different like, you know, pickles and things like that. But yeah, definitely it's a main meal. And that's what I was trying to say earlier is like, this was also the traditional way that I think our ancestors used to eat. And I think lately we feel like it's not tabigh and like, you know, meat, heavy stuff, and it's not a main meal, right? But this is actually, and when I went back this past fall, this is now how people have, you know, returned to eating. Most people, 80-90%, this is what they're eating every single day now, you know, and maybe they can get away with it once a week. They'll eat something that is where meat is the main component, right?
Right. So are all these things in the first version of the book? Because or the first edition as well?
Yes. Okay. This was in there. I think that first edition was probably less detailed and less, maybe in the case of some recipes, not as accurate, because there were some, not many, maybe 2 or 3 that we kind of like thought we got an accurate version. But then when we went back to our various locales and went through our notes, we're like, wait a minute, what does this mean? And how is it done? And we couldn't figure it out. And nobody knew how to make this dish in the US or anywhere. She was in Spain. And in fact, some of my relatives live in California. And I remember coming across, I don't know if they're listening, but Khatuna Nawal al-Farra. And I remember she was the one, I think, if I'm not mistaken, who might have helped me get the correct version of this and was like, no, this is how it's done. And I was like, oh, thank God, somebody knows that, because I've been like asking, nobody knows. And so we corrected a lot of those in the second edition of the book that are much more accurate, where we were kind of estimating in the first one. So,
well, please hurry up and get the third edition out, because I think I need.
There may be, like I said, some third-party vendors that have it, like the U.S. I mean, not the Middle East News and in Washington, maybe the Museum of the Palestinian People. Some of them, there's a few stray copies here and there, I think. But yeah, we're hoping. I don't know. We'll have to talk to my publisher and see what happens. But yeah. But in the meantime, I'm happy to answer any questions. And
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you again. And we are looking forward. I hope the third edition does come out pretty soon, because I think it'd be, it's fun to kind of watch the evolution and see what's in here that I don't have in my first one. And, just keep cooking. I mean, I love it. So thank you again. Thank you for being with us. And thank you for talking about the program that we are supporting today and the importance of supporting female heads of household. And thank you, Malek. And we hope to have you again with us soon. Maybe making a different dish. I would love to do this periodically. I think it's great for us all. So
absolutely. And I encourage, all the viewers to take a moment and donate at Kinder USA for this, amazing program that I saw firsthand, the chicken farms, and the training for the women. So thank you everyone again. And I hope to see you again soon so we can cook together.
Inshallah. I would love that. Thank you, Malek. Bye, guys. Bye. I hope that you guys enjoyed as much as I did having Laila with us and cooking. And, I would have loved to be making it at home at the same time, but I think that would have been difficult for our conversation. But I'm definitely going to try it as soon as I can. And just to remind everybody, as Laila was saying, these programs are so important. And this is what we're doing this for. And this is why we're having the conversations. And it's great for us to be able to, cook and feed our children. But we can't forget that there are families in Gaza that can't do that. And, like we were saying, $20, just $20 can help a family, can help empower a woman to have an income for her family. And then we take those chickens and those eggs, and then we give them to impoverished families during our Ramadan program. So it really is a great program. So please consider donating. Any amount matters. But like I said, just $20 will help one family get the chickens and the feeders and the eggs and be able to really sustain a little bit of an income. So thank you again for joining us, and we will see you next month.